Welcome to a new Neon Jazz interview with another talented piece of a thriving jazz pool in 2013's Kansas City scene. Trombonist and leader of the band Project H, Mr. Ryan Heinlein. Over the course of this interview, he talks about growing up in Wichita, seeing the world in a ska band while he got his music chops developed, the power of Mingus, along with much, much more. Dig it. I'm going to start out from the top here. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Hutchinson, Kansas, and then grew up in Wichita. And I lived there till I was 28. I've been I think today might be I think I have been in Kansas City exactly 5 years now.
Oh, cool. So what was it like growing up in Wichita as far as, incubating kind of a jazz background for you?
Pretty non-existent, really. My high school, I was in a decent high school music program, but our jazz band, we played Glenn Miller and Chicago tunes. And so I remember I went to Wichita State, and they had a decent jazz program and a good director, and I remember going into the director's office, and he's like, so do you listen to jazz? I was like, I listen to Chicago, and I've got a Glenn Miller record, and that's about it. So really, once I got into college in Wichita, that's really sort of where I got interested in jazz, and I was third chair in the second band my freshman year. I wasn't that good or anything as far as Wichita State is concerned. And slowly, probably my second, third year in college is when I really started to take an interest. I joined. There was a combo that it wasn't like a school-run combo. It was just a group of guys and a girl that were really into jazz, and they asked me to play. And so that's sort of where I started really listening to jazz and getting into jazz and becoming interested in pursuing it and writing and everything like that.
Who really moved you in the beginning?
What's that?
What musicians really moved you in the beginning?
The main one was Mingus. He was sort of the one that really piqued my interest, because that meeting with the jazz director. He's asking me, well, if you don't listen to jazz, what type of music do you really like? And I listen to a lot of alternative and rap and things like that. And I was like, I like things that make me think. I like things that I have to think about, and I like to try and analyze it. So the first thing he played me was actually Tijuana Moods, or I think that was the record, New Tijuana Moods by Mingus. He played me that and gave me 3 Mingus albums to listen to, or CDs, I guess, not really albums. So he gave me 3 of those, and then I got I got into Dave Brubeck a little bit, just with the Timeout, with all the tunes with the odd time signatures, just trying to listen to that. And then I actually started listening to trombone players after that, and started getting into JJ Johnson and Frank Rosolino. So
what was it about the trombone that made you levitate towards it?
My 6th grade band director actually made me play. I wanted to play saxophone, but I was horrible at it and could barely make a sound. And he, trying the brass instrument, I could actually get a decent buzz on the instrument, I guess. And he's like, you should play trombone. So I played trombone. I started on trombone and was actually ready to quit music. I was I was really into baseball. I was a decent baseball player, and I wanted to play baseball in high school, and ended up sticking with music and really falling in love with performing and everything like that. Getting goosebumps from performing and seeing people's reaction to something that you're creating or playing, and gave up sports and focused on music. So the trombone, I didn't really pick the trombone was my 3rd choice out of 3 instruments that I wanted to play. But I'm glad I I think it's worked out a little bit.
Sure. So
yeah.
Without being presumptuous, so it started in 6th grade with you, with the trombone.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk to me about your family. How have they influenced your musical pursuits, and just kind of talk to me about them a little bit?
I've got a very wide background as far as musical taste. I grew up listening to pop music. Like my parents raised me on a healthy diet of like Earth, Wind and Fire and Santana and Tower of Power. And then I have an older brother and an older sister. They're 8 years and 5 years older than me, respectively. Growing up in the 80s, I had everything from Michael Jackson to Metallica to Bob Marley to Hank Williams Jr., just being thrown at me on top of all the older music that my parents listened to. And so, as far as pop, growing up around music, I was always around music. My dad is a keyboardist. He played in cover bands in South Central Kansas. So I got a good idea of what gigging was like at an early age, and going out into Western Kansas and doing loading up gear and taking a van ride 4 or 5 hours out into the middle of nowhere and playing dances and then loading stuff up and getting home at 4 a.m. I remember doing that when I was 10 or 11 with my dad, just because it was easier just to take me out there. But then everything from listening to my parents' music to stealing my brothers and sisters' records or tapes and listening to those, it gave me a really wide spectrum of influence, I guess, for the type of music that I grew up on. And then, of course, once I got into college is when I started to get into jazz, so it's all kind of meshed together on how I play and how I write. Speaking of influences on you, I've noticed that you were coached by Elliot Mayson and Wycliffe Gordon. What was that like? Really, really cool. I've been fortunate enough to, whenever, Elliot is sponsored by a trombone maker in town, and so he comes in every, once or twice a year, and he comes in once or twice a year to work on horns, and maybe, he plays a little bit sometimes when he's here. So I've been fortunate enough to just get lessons set up with him every time and keep in contact with him outside of that, and just kind of tell him what I'm working on. And he throws a few things on that, and he is Elliot Mason's style of play is just so it's incredible to me. Like, he doesn't sound like I don't think he sounds like a trombone should sound, but I love it. And just getting into his harmonic concepts and everything like that, it sounds really, really complex, but at its core, it's such a simple idea of what he does, and just trying to work on that. And it's really taken a long time just to kind of rewire myself. And it's something I'm still working on. It's just rewiring myself on how to approach, improvisation. And then with Wycliffe, I've only got to play with a couple times. It started out with just I got asked to drive him from Topeka to Wichita one time. He was playing a gig in Topeka, and then he had to go down to Wichita. And one of the jazz directors at a smaller college in Wichita asked me if I would go and pick him up, and she'd pay me gas and stuff. So I got to spend 2 hours in a car with him, and it was like, okay, I've got one of the best trombone players in the world in my front seat with me. I have to just I tried to keep my distance at first and let him do his thing. He was listening to music, and he's like, can I listen to these recordings? He's like, by all means, please let me hear these things that no one else has heard. And then finally, I just started to start conversation with him and just kind of pick his brain about approach. And we ended up having a lesson in Wichita, and then I've had one other lesson with him. And he's just so rooted in the blues and the gospel music, his influences and how he was brought up, and hearing him play and hearing what his background was, it really makes sense as far as his how his style of play. So, man, that's a gift right there from a genie in a bottle, to have to sit in a car for 2 hours with somebody that's basically an idol. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, it was a rough trip.
I bet. So talk to me about the bands and projects that you've been involved with over the years. We're going to get to Project H, but I kind of want to have a timeline leading up to today, what you've been involved with.
Sure. I started playing, like, I guess my first professional gig was, I was 15. There were in high school, there was a small group of kids that were in the big band. They got to open up for Gooding. I don't know if you've ever heard of Gooding.
Yeah.
He was a former student of my former band, my old band director, and so he came in and worked. Just hung out and worked. His band worked with the big band in high school, and then he picked a few of us and worked a couple tunes and asked us to come play a gig with him. And so we did that, and then I joined in the mid-90s, as a trombone player, trying to, with dreams of becoming like a rock star and being a very mediocre guitarist. The only route I really had was to join a ska band, and so I was in a ska band for like 10 years in Wichita, and was able to open up for some pretty big artists and tour the country doing that through college, which was pretty cool. And then, like I said, I joined that jazz combo in Wichita. It was called the Colossal Jazz Ensemble, which was 6 or 7 of us, and we really focused on just writing our own tunes. And I never really wrote anything for that group. The bassist and the bassist and the trumpet player wrote a lot of the tunes, and the drummer wrote a lot of tunes too. But that kind of piqued my interest in writing, and I really wasn't comfortable with it. I wasn't comfortable with sharing music with, sharing my ideas and just kind of laying myself out there for people. But we were around for quite a while until, most of the musicians, I think there's only one of them that still lives in Wichita. There's a couple that lived in New York and played with Junior Mance, and a couple of them are in the Air Force now, doing Air Force bands in one way or another. So the Colossal kind of, when everyone went their separate ways, everyone's still doing something pretty unique and pretty cool. So those were my two big things on, my two big, like, full-time groups aside from, just regular freelancing and everything. And then I was actually a 5 through 12 band director in Wichita at a private school for 3 years before I moved to Kansas City.
Cool. Very cool. So it sounds like everything's kind of culminated to the Project H, which sounds very interesting. What is that like? It seems like it's been kind of a labor of love and kind of an apex of where you're at as a musician now. Yeah.
Excuse me. I think it really is. It was a culmination of everything, all the things in Wichita before that. It was, I was wanting to write. Colossal was done. Ophil, the ska band was done, and I still wanted to play. I was happy freelancing and making money doing that, but I kind of wanted to do my own thing that focused on trombone, just because there's so little music that's like, hey, the trombone player is leading the band. It's not a saxophone player or a singer or anything like that. So I started writing. I wrote a few tunes for just trombone, and then I decided, it might sound good with sax, and it might sound good with a trumpet. And so I put together, I had like 5 tunes written, and I put together a rehearsal just to see what the music sounded like, because aside from me, half-heartedly chunking away on piano at it or putting it in like Sibelius and hearing horrible MIDI versions of my music. So I got those people together and listened to it, and was like, okay, that's cool. And then I scheduled a gig there was a new music festival in Wichita. I was able to get on. It was probably 4 or 5 months after that rehearsal, and I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing, and actually started the band in Wichita we started getting regular gigs about a year before I planned on moving to Kansas City anyway. So we played some gigs, recorded a CD down there, and then I immediately moved up here, so I'd already planned on it, and really just, once I got into the jazz scene and the music scene up here, trying to find the right pieces to continue that up here. And, a lot of my writing is just it's just a big stew of past influences or, issues that I'm going through personally or whatever right now. So.
Sure. Which is the way music should be.
Yes.
Indeed. So, it sounds like, especially with the ska band, you've really traveled around the country and even the world. Where have been some of your favorite places that you performed?
My favorite so far has been I was in Bobby Watson's band at UMKC 2 years ago, and we went to Japan. That was definitely a highlight, being able to go to Japan and play and perform for the people over there for 10 days, and how receptive they were to jazz. It was just sort of such a beautiful place. Like, I was excited to go to Japan because it was a new place, but if you had asked me to write down like the 4 or 5 places in the world I would want to visit, Japan wouldn't have been on that. But I want to go back again so bad, just because it's beautiful, and it's such a nice place. The people are friendly and really receptive to jazz. So Japan would be the first place. There was and actually one of my favorite places to play in the country is in Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's since been closed down, I think now, but there was a place we played on the little the bar strip in Oklahoma. We would play there once every month or two. And it was just a blast. Just being able to hang out with people afterwards, and there's a really good chili dog place next to it.
Nice.
That was chili dogs with green Tabasco and Fritos on it were amazing.
Oh man, yeah, I can't shake that imagery right there. That's all right. Man, so let's talk about Kansas City. A couple things. First of all, it seems like the scene's really flourishing. There's a good crop going on right now. You guys have some good venues to play at. Talk to me about Kansas City.
Kansas City has been absolutely amazing, and I feel very fortunate to be able to work with some of the people I work with and play with some of the people that I play with right now. When I first got here, and especially just, from Project H, from that viewpoint, it was once I found the right people for we played a few gigs with people, and no one really did a bad job. It just, I found the right chemistry. When Jardines was open, that was a good place to play. And I was really worried about what was going to happen once that place closed down. But I think having that place closed down has really allowed for more venues to. You've got the Green Lady Lounge and the Kill Devil, which are actually two places that Project H has never played. But there's a really good group of young musicians, and there's a great group of old musicians who really don't. One thing I encountered in Wichita was the old musicians really held on to the gigs, and they really weren't that receptive to the younger crowd coming up, and I think that sort of hindered the scene in Wichita. What I've seen here is, a lot of the older musicians have taken these younger musicians under their wing and really helped them and helped mold them, and sometimes through tough love and sometimes through just straight guidance, telling them, showing them how to be professional, how to book a gig, how to act, and on top of, how to play, giving lessons and things like that. It's been great, and I don't think there's very many cliques. Everyone kind of gets along and supports each other, and, if you've got a free night that you're not playing, a lot of times, one of my first thoughts is, okay, I've got the night off. Who should I go watch tonight? Because there's always going to be someone to go watch, and I think that's such a great thing. Like, I don't want to move from this area just because it's so nice. It's just a healthy environment, and I think it really helps everyone kind of, improve and like I said, I think it's a great group of people and really, really good musicians, really down to earth, and yeah, I think Kansas City's great.
So let me put the spotlight back on you. Talk to me about your accomplishments in life, both musically and personally, up to this point.
I've got a wife and a kid, and I got a 2-year-old boy, and I'm really, really, like, that's probably the best thing ever so far, is just being able, one, actually having a supporting wife that I haven't completely scared away with bad decisions, and you're going to go work tonight. How much? I'm going to go. I'll go make $20 or $30 with a big band tonight, and I'm going to not hang out with you tonight so I can go make $30. And she's totally cool with that.
Yeah.
So, just having being able to somewhat support my family to a point and be able to contribute as sort of not the head of the household or anything like that, but just being a father and a good father and a good husband is probably my biggest accomplishment. And as far as playing, I don't know if I'm ever going to be satisfied with how I'm playing. I always want to continue to improve. I'm happy with the process and the road that I've taken so far, and I'm proud that I have the respect and the admiration of some my peers in the music community here, where they're not being able to get asked to play a gig is great, but just having people, someone saying, yeah, do you know any good trombone players, or is there anyone worth hiring? Having someone throw my name out as one of the first people that's what I'm really happy with. I don't expect to make tons of money being a musician or anything like that. And when I was younger, that's what I kind of thought it. If I want to make it as a musician, that's what it meant. But that's not what it means to me anymore. It's just that, having the respect of your peers and that's the biggest thing to me, is just having the respect and having people not think I'm a complete hack at what I do.
Sure.
That's probably my biggest accomplishment right now. I'm finishing my doctorate in classical trombone next year, and that'll be a pretty big accomplishment as well. Just being able to stick with it for this long and pay the amount of money that schools want me to pay to take their classes and things like that.
Yeah, no kidding. So talk to me about some of your short and long-term plans.
Short term right now, like this summer, I am really trying to just focus on writing material for the next album. I've got 4 songs. I've got 2 that are pretty much done and 2 more that are almost done. I would like to have another 10 to 11 songs to pick and choose from for the next album. So I'm hoping to write that over the summer or get at least pretty solid over the summer, and then possibly go back into a studio in the winter. And that's really my one short-term goal right now. Is I'm focused on that. Long-term, just continue to book the Project H in different places with different types of bands. We've kind of opened it up where we'll play with a reggae band. We've played with folk acts. We've played with like hard rock bands before, and played all different. I mean, we're not limited to just the jazz clubs in Kansas City. We sold out the Record Bar a couple weeks ago doing the Beck show, doing the Beck project, and having, I used Project H as the opening band so we could play for 250 people. You played the Czar Bar and the Riot Room, but have also, we played Take 5, and we're able to go through and, pretty versatile and play wherever we want. So just to continue to do that, I think there's an audience for my music that is, there's the jazz audience that will come and listen and enjoy, hopefully. But I think there's an audience, a younger alternative type crowd that, even if they aren't completely into the music, they appreciate it and they'll stay and listen. and I'm trying to find that sort of audience, which is why we've play the Replay and Lawrence and just different types of bands, indie rock bands, and like I said, reggae bands and rappers. We've been able to back Reach before at the Record Bar, which was cool. So just long term, just continue to grow and start to peek our head outside of Kansas City every once in a while to possibly like St. Louis, and we still play I still play quite a bit down in Wichita with this group. I'm starting to bring the Kansas City guys down now, as our gigs are paying enough that I can actually get them down there now. So
very cool.
That's pretty much my long term. Finish this last degree. I teach. I'm an adjunct low brass instructor at a small college southwest of town. Continue to do that. Hopefully get a college teaching job soon, and just continue to write and play and progress.
Right on. So if you could go back in time and meet one jazz musician, who would it be and why?
Oh, man. Just one.
Yeah. We could throw another one in there.
No, this will be good. This will be good for me to narrow it down. They forced me to do this now.
Sure.
Probably Mingus. I mean, he was my first exposure to like that's what really got me into jazz. Like I said, I had heard other people before just through playing their music in high school and stuff like that, but he was the first one where I listened to that. I listened to New Tijuana Moods and went, all right, what's going on here? Why is I listened to it and I asked questions. So probably Mingus, just because he's the one that he was sort of the catalyst for me asking questions about this music and why does this work here? Or why did they do that there? And I think that would be great just from a compositional and analytical standpoint, is just listening to, I would love to sit down with him and listen to his records and go, what's happening there? And why'd you scream right there? Why did you yell out there? Things like that. So
sure. Very cool. So when you
trombone player wise, probably Frank Rosalino, just to get his background and his upbringing. There's so many different stories about him, and especially at the end of his life, what all was going on and what happened. But before even that, just he's probably my favorite trombone player of all time, just because the way he plays. So I would like to meet him.
Very cool. So when you were in Japan, did you get a lot of people asking for your autograph?
We did a couple. Not a whole lot, though. The one interaction that I remember from Japan is we were playing a festival that it might have been sponsored by like Mitsubishi, and it was like at the real like Mitsubishi plant. Just this huge thing, but there were like there were supposed to be like 110,000 people in this festival, and maybe only a couple thousand were watching us, but just there were tents and games and rides and food and music all over. And this guy comes up to me and Ryan Sharp, who we're both pretty big guys, and he looks at me and he points and he goes, "American?" And Ryan and I look at each other and go, "Yeah." And he comes and he shakes my belly. Like, he comes and puts both hands on the sides of my belly and shakes it and goes, "Oh, American." And then he did it to Ryan, and like, if we weren't in Japan, the guy probably would have got punched.
Yeah.
But,
that's awesome.
But, it was like, okay, that was, in a way, it was kind of our rock star moment. Like, this guy obviously hadn't really been around many Americans, which, I would expect him to, but, evidently that was a special thing to him to see a slightly overweight American be able to shake his belly. So we went with it, and that's one thing that I probably will never forget.
Oh yeah, that's a good story. So when you look back on your life, is there anything that you would have done differently?
The only thing I wish I would have done is get into jazz earlier. I was 21 before I really started to get into it a lot and really play it. Other than that, I wouldn't change anything that I've done. Like I said, especially playing with that ska band. At times, things get really loud with that, and it might have a long-term effect on my tone, or playing in loud rock bands and things like that, or playing for little to no money a lot of times because there's 7 of us and we have to pay for gas and we had to pay for CDs and things like that. But the experiences that I got there, being able to play out, and we would go to Colorado all the time. We would play in California and Las Vegas. Go out to the West Coast a lot. It allowed me to travel and see a lot of parts of the world and see a lot of people and meet. I mean, the dude from Maroon 5, it's Adam Levine. The band that he was in before Maroon 5 opened up for us. I got to meet Adam Levine when I was 15. I got to meet Gwen Stefani when I was 15. There's all kinds of really cool, I've got tons of stories about that are probably inappropriate for even a podcast. But it's those types of things that shaped who I am now, and I'm happy with where I'm at and the way I'm going, the path that I'm on right now, and I probably wouldn't be on that path if I didn't do all this stuff before. So, like I said, I wouldn't change. If I did change anything, it would probably be just to get in and take jazz a little bit more seriously at an earlier age.
Very cool. So, what was the last album or song you listened to before we talked today? Just in the last 3 days, I found Casting for Gravity by Donnie McCaslin. Cool. And that CD so far has blown me away. The song that I listened, I just found myself putting this song on repeat and getting goosebumps listening to especially the end of the song. Grande or something. I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's Praia and then Grande. I keep listening to that song, and for some reason I can't stop listening to it. And that's what was in the car before the auto people called me back. I know. Well, as we get to the end here of the interview, I got one last question. I want you, in the length of a tweet, to tell me who you are.
In the length of a tweet?
Yes.
Okay. So 144 characters, man.
That's it.
I am a trombone player from Kansas City. I think I'm one of the most versatile trombone players in the area, and I'll do anything on a trombone.
Very cool, man. Hey, Ryan, again, thanks for your time.
Great, man. Thank you for everything you do, Joe.
Thanks for tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players doing that jazz in Kansas City and around the country these days. And thanks to Ryan for his time and insight into his craft. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.